A hospital room in Philadelphia, November 7, 2011. Muhammad Ali, the man who once floated like a butterfly and stung like a bee, can barely stand without trembling. His hands shake from 30 years of Parkinson's disease. His speech is reduced to whispers, but with tremendous effort, he lowers himself to his knees beside a hospital bed where a skeletal man weighs barely 120 pounds, his body ravaged by liver cancer. Joe Frazier. The warrior Ali spent 40 years trying to destroy, and in 3 words spoken so softly, the room has to hold its breath to hear them. Muhammad Ali says what he's never been able to say before. Joe, I'm sorry. This is the story of the cruelest psychological war in sports history, and the forgiveness that ended it one day before death. But to understand this moment, you have to go back to where it all began. Not in a boxing ring, in a betrayal. Take 8. Muhammad Ali had been stripped of his heavyweight championship for refusing to fight in Vietnam. He'd given up 3.5 years of his prime, millions of dollars, his title, everything, because he believed the war was wrong. I ain't got no quarrel with them Viet Cong, he'd said, and America punished him for it. While Ali fought the U.S. government in courtrooms, Joe Frazier became champion. And when Ali needed money, when he was broke and banned and desperate, Joe Frazier did something remarkable. He supported Ali. He spoke up for Ali's right to refuse the draft. He even lent Ali money. Joe Frazier, a poor kid from South Carolina who'd picked vegetables for pennies, helped the man who would soon become his biggest rival. In Frazier's mind, they were brothers, both black, both fighters, both survivors. Then Ali got his license back, and he needed to fight his way back to the championship. The only thing standing between Ali and the crown was Joe Frazier, and Ali made a decision that would haunt both men for the rest of their lives. He decided to destroy Joe Frazier psychologically, before they ever entered the ring. The psychological warfare Muhammad Ali waged against Joe Frazier wasn't trash talk. It was character assassination. It was racial humiliation. It was designed to make Frazier not just lose, but to make him question his own identity as a black man in America. Ali started calling Frazier an Uncle Tom. He said Frazier was a puppet for white America. He called him ignorant. He called him ugly. Worst of all, in press conferences, on television, in front of millions of people, Ali started calling Joe Frazier a gorilla. He'd bring a toy gorilla to interviews and beat it up, saying, "This is what I'm gonna do to Joe Frazier." He'd make ape sounds when Frazier's name came up. For Frazier, who had supported Ali during the darkest period of his life, this wasn't just disrespect, it was a betrayal that cut to the bone. Frazier had grown up in the Jim Crow South. He knew what it meant when white people called black men animals. And now here was Muhammad Ali, the man Frazier had helped, using the same language, the same dehumanizing rhetoric, to sell a fight. Ali knew exactly what he was doing. He was taking the racist playbook and using it as a weapon because it worked. It sold tickets. It created drama. And it made Frazier so angry, so hurt, so desperate to prove Ali wrong, that the fight became personal in a way that would poison both their lives. Years later, Ali would try to justify it. He'd say it was just promotion, just business, just the fight game. But Joe Frazier never forgave him. "God might not like me talking like this," Frazier would say decades later, "but it's in me. I hated. He took a piece of me that night that I never got back." March 8, Madison Square Garden. The fight of the century. 2 undefeated champions. Ali trying to reclaim what was stolen from him. Frazier trying to prove he wasn't anybody's pup. For 15 rounds, they beat each other with a savagery that shocked the world. This wasn't boxing. This was personal. This was rage made flesh. In the 15th round, Frazier landed a left hook so devastating, it lifted Ali off his feet and sent him to the canvas. The first time Muhammad Ali had ever been knocked down in a professional fight. Frazier won by unanimous decision, but the victory came at a terrible cost. His face was so swollen afterward that he spent 2 weeks in the hospital. Both men had damaged each other in ways that went far beyond the physical. They fought again in Ali won a decision. The rivalry should have ended there, but there was one more fight coming. and it would become the most brutal sporting event in history. October, Manila, Philippines. The Thrilla in Manila. Even the name sounds like hell. And that's exactly what it became. The temperature inside the arena was over 100 degrees. The humidity was suffocating. Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos and his wife watched from ringside as two men tried to kill each other. Ali had continued the psychological warfare in the lead-up. More guerrilla references. More Uncle Tom accusation. Frazier arrived in Manila carrying so much hatred it was visible in his eyes. For 14 rounds, they fought at a level of intensity that remains unmatched in boxing history. Ali later said, "Man, I hit him with punches that would bring down the walls of a city. But Frazier wouldn't fall. He just kept coming forward, absorbing punishment that should have killed him, throwing bombs back at Ali. By the middle rounds, Ali was leaning on the ropes, exhausted, telling his corner, 'This is the closest thing to dying that I know of.' By the 14th round, Joe Frazier could barely see. Both eyes were nearly swollen shut. His face was a mask of blood and bruises. Every breath was agony. When the bell rang to end the round, Frazier tried to stand for the 15th. But his trainer, Eddie Futch, wouldn't let him continue. "Sit down, son," Futch said, tears streaming down his face. "It's all over. No one will ever forget what you did here today." Ali had won, but he collapsed in his corner immediately after. He couldn't stand for the post-fight interview. He later admitted he was ready to quit himself if the fight had gone one more round. The Thrilla in Manila should have ended with mutual respect. Both men had proven their greatness. Both had pushed beyond any reasonable human limit. Both had shown courage that transcended sport. But instead, the bitterness only grew worse. In the years that followed, Ali continued to mock Frazier in public. On talk shows, in interviews, he'd make jokes at Frazier's expense. Each insult was like another punch, except these came when Frazier had no way to fight back. The anger consumed Frazier. In interviews, he would say he dreamed of Ali dying in a car crash. He told reporters that if Ali were on fire, he wouldn't cross the street to throw water on him. "I hated him," Frazier admitted. "I wanted him dead." The two men would occasionally cross paths at boxing events, Hall of Fame ceremonies, charity dinners, but they never spoke. If one entered a room, the other would leave. At a ceremony in 2001 where both were being honored, they stood on opposite sides of the stage and refused to look at each other. 40 years of hatred, 40 years of a wound that wouldn't heal, 40 years of two warriors trapped in a war that should have ended. But something was changing in Muhammad Ali, and it wasn't just the Parkinson's disease slowly taking away his ability to speak and move. It was something deeper, something spiritual. Islam had always taught Ali about seeking forgiveness, about humility, about service to others, but it took losing his physical power to truly understand what those teachings meant. As the Parkinson's progressed, as his hands started to shake, as his speech became slower and more difficult, as getting through each day required tremendous effort, Ali began to reflect on his life in ways he never had before, and he kept thinking about Joe Frazier. His wife Lonnie noticed it around 2. Muhammad started talking about Joe. She remembered. He would say Joe's name and shake his head. "I knew he had regrets, but his speech was so limited he couldn't fully express what he was feeling." Ali tried several times to reach out. He called Frazier's number. Frazier wouldn't answer. At a boxing event, Ali approached Frazier and tried to embrace him. Frazier pushed him away and walked out of the building. "It's too late," Frazier told a reporter afterward. "He can't take back what he did to me." They thought it was over. They thought the hatred would outlive them both. They thought some wounds were too deep to heal. Then, in the fall of 2011, Joe Frazier was diagnosed with liver cancer, aggressive, terminal, weeks to live, maybe less. As Frazier lay in his hospital bed in Philadelphia, knowing death was coming, something shifted in his heart. His daughter Jackie was sitting with him when he suddenly said, "I want to see Ali. I need to talk to him before I go." Jackie was shocked. Her father had spent 40 years refusing to forgive Muhammad Ali. Now, with death approaching,
He wanted reconciliation. "Are you sure, Dad?" she asked. "Yeah," Frazier said weakly. "It's time. We're both old men now. This hate has got to end." When the call came to Ali's home in Phoenix, his wife Lonnie answered. She listened as Jackie Frazier explained the situation, explained her father's wish. "We'll be there," Lonnie said immediately. "Tell your father we're coming." The logistics were complicated. Ali's Parkinson's made travel difficult. He required constant care, but Lonnie arranged everything. Within 2 days, they were on a plane to Philadelphia. November 7th, Muhammad Ali walked into Joe Frazier's hospital room for the last time. The scene was heartbreaking. Frazier, once a powerful heavyweight champion who could absorb Ali's hardest punches and keep coming forward, now looked small and fragile in his hospital bed. The cancer had ravaged his body. He weighed barely 120 pounds. His skin had taken on a yellowish tint from liver failure. The warrior had been reduced to bones and shallow breaths. Ali approached slowly, his hands shaking from Parkinson's. For a long moment, the two men just looked at each other. 40 years of anger, pain and regret hung in the air between them. All the words that had been said, all the punches that had been thrown, all the hatred that had poisoned both their lives, it was all there in that silence. Then Muhammad Ali did something that surprised everyone in the room. With tremendous effort, fighting against the Parkinson's that wanted to topple him, he lowered himself to his knees beside Joe Frazier's bed. This is the moment. This is the thumbnail. This is the image that will define both their legacies more than any knockout, any championship, any victory in the ring. The man who had called himself the greatest, the man who had humiliated Joe Frazier in front of the world, the man whose pride was legendary, was on his knees, begging forgiveness. "Joe," Ali said, his voice trembling and slow, each word a tremendous effort. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything I said. You didn't deserve that. You were always a great champion and I was wrong to talk about you the way I did." Tears were streaming down Ali's face. The Parkinson's made it difficult to express himself, but everyone in that room understood every word he was saying. This wasn't performance. This wasn't promotion. This was a man confronting the worst thing he'd ever done, and trying to make it right before it was too late. Joe Frazier reached out with his thin, cancer-wasted hand, and placed it on top of Ali's trembling head. The gesture was unmistakable. Blessing, absolution, forgiveness. "It's okay, champ," Frazier said softly, his voice weak but clear. "You're forgiven. We both said things. We both did things. But you made me great. Our fights made both of us who we are. I couldn't have been great without you. You made me great too, Joe," Ali responded, still on his knees, still weeping. "Nobody ever pushed me the way you did. Nobody ever made me dig that deep. You were the toughest man I ever fought, the bravest man I ever knew." For the next hour, they talked, sometimes words, sometimes just silence, holding hands. They talked about Manila, about the heat, about the impossibility of what they'd done to each other and somehow survived. They talked about their children. They talked about getting old, about facing death, about what it all meant. At one point, Frazier asked Ali about the Parkinson's. "Does it hurt?" "Only my pride," Ali said, managing a small smile. "But I deserved it. All those punches you gave me, they made me who I am. And all those punches you gave me," Frazier said, "they're part of me too. We're connected forever, you and me. We're part of each other's story." Before Ali left that hospital room, he did something no one expected. He took off the Islamic prayer bracelet he always wore and placed it on Frazier's wrist. "This will protect you," Ali said, "on your journey." "Thank you, brother," Frazier said, looking at the bracelet, then back at Ali's face. "You're still the greatest." "No, Joe," Ali said, tears still flowing, voice breaking. "We both are. We both are." Muhammad Ali left that hospital room and never saw Joe Frazier again. Just one day later, on November 7th, 2011, Joe Frazier passed away. Ali's prayer bracelet was still on his wrist. At Frazier's funeral, Ali couldn't attend because of his health, but he sent a statement that was read aloud. "The world has lost a great champion. I will always remember Joe with respect and admiration. Go back to God. Joe Frazier." You were a great fighter and a great man. Rest in peace, brother. Marvis Frazier, Joe's son, later revealed what his father's final words about Ali had been. He told me, "I forgive him. Tell Muhammad I forgive him, and I hope he forgives me too. We were warriors together. We pushed each other to be great, and in the end that's all that mattered." The story of Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier isn't just about boxing, it's about the weight of words, the burden of pride, and the courage it takes to ask for forgiveness when you know you don't deserve it. Ali had faced down the United States government. He'd stood up to the most powerful military in the world, and refused to compromise his principles. He'd been threatened, stripped of his title, banned for years, and he never bent. That took courage. But kneeling beside Joe Frazier's deathbed and saying "I'm sorry," that took a different kind of courage. The kind that only comes when you've lost everything else, when your hands shake and your voice fails, and your body betrays you, and all you have left is your soul, and you look at that soul and realize it's carrying weight it was never meant to carry. The Parkinson's disease that slowly destroyed Muhammad Ali's body did something unexpected to his spirit. It stripped away the bravado, the showmanship, the need to be the greatest, and what was left underneath was just a man who had made mistakes, a man who had hurt someone who didn't deserve it, a man who wanted to be forgiven before he died. When Ali passed away in 2016, 5 years after Joe Frazier, Marvis Frazier was one of the first to speak publicly about his passing. "My father died at peace because of that meeting," he said, "and I believe Muhammad did too. They needed each other in life and they needed each other at the end. That's what real greatness looks like." Today, at the International Boxing Hall of Fame, there's a photograph displayed of Ali and Frazier standing together in that hospital room, both smiling, hands clasped. Neither man's face shows the damage of their wars anymore. What you see instead are two friends who found their way back to each other after 40 years in the darkness. Beneath the photo is a plaque with a quote from Muhammad Ali: "Joe Frazier was the greatest fighter I ever fought, not just in the ring, but in life. He taught me what it means to be a warrior, and at the very end, he taught me what it means to forgive." Muhammad Ali won 61 professional fights. He defeated every champion of his era. He reclaimed his title 3 times. He lit the Olympic torch in front of billions. But his final fight, the one that mattered most, wasn't won with his fists. It was won on his knees, in a hospital room in Philadelphia, asking for something he didn't earn and receiving grace he didn't deserve. That's the fight that made him the great. Not the punches he threw, but the forgiveness he asked for. Not the championships he won, but the brother he reconciled with before it was too late. Sometimes the most powerful weapon against hatred isn't a fist but an open heart. Sometimes the greatest victory is the one that requires no opponent, only the courage to say 2 words, "I'm sorry." And sometimes, in the shadow of death, 2 warriors discover what they should have known all along, that they were never really fighting each other. They were fighting together, pushing each other to heights neither could have reached alone, connected forever, part of each other's story, champions not because they destroyed each other, but because they found the strength to forgive. If this story moved you, remember this: we all carry grudges we think we can't release. We all have people we've hurt, people who've hurt us, wounds we think are too deep to heal. Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier spent 40 years proving that some hatreds last forever. Then they spent 1 hour proving they were wrong. It's never too late. It's never impossible. And the fight that saves your soul is always the one where you lay down your fists and open your hands. That's what greatness really looks like.